Class 8. Subject Social Studies, History. Lesson 4 Bils dikus and the Vision of a Golden Age. Q1. Who were Mundas? Ans. Mundas was a tribal group that lived in Chota Nagpur. Q2. Who was Birsa Munda? Ans. Birsa was born in the mid-1870s. The son of a poor father, he grew up around the forests of Bohonda, grazing sheep, playing the flute, and dancing in the local akhara. Q3. What was the color of the flag raised by Mundas as a symbol of Birsa Raj? Ans. The white flag. Q4. Name the leaves used for making plates by the Dongriya Kanda women of Orissa. Ans. Pandanus leaves. Q5. What is fallow field? Ans. Fallow field is a field left uncultivated for a while so that the soil recovers fertility. Q6. Why did the British introduce land settlement? Ans. Because they wanted a regular revenue source for the state. Q7. Why were some forests classified as reserved forests by the British? Ans. As they produced timber which the British wanted. Q8. Who were the outsiders being referred to as dikus? Ans. Missionaries, moneylenders, Hindu landlords, and the British government were the outsiders being referred to as diku. Q9. Why was Birsa convicted? Ans. British arrested Birsa in 1895, convicted him on charges of rioting and jailed him for 2 years. Q10. Why did Forest Department establish forest villages in many regions? Ans. To ensure a regular supply of cheap labor. Q11. Which tribal group was reluctant to work for others and why? Ans. Beggars of central India were reluctant to do work for others. The beggars saw themselves as people of the forest, who could only live on the produce of the forest. It was below the dignity of a beggar to become a laborer. Q12. What problems did Birsa set out to resolve? Ans. Their familiar ways of life seemed to be disappearing. 2. Their livelihoods were under threat. 3. Their religion appeared to be in danger. Q13. Why did the British want tribal groups to settle down and become peasant cultivators? Ans. Because settled peasants were easier to control and administer than people who were always on the move. Q14. How did British officials see settled tribal groups and those who lived in the forest? Ans. British officials saw settled tribal groups like the Gonds and Santals as more civilized than hunter-gatherers or shifting cultivators. Those who lived in the forests were considered to be wild and savage. They needed to be settled and civilized. Q15. What accounts for the anger of the Bils against the dikus? Ans. The land policies of the British were destroying their traditional land system. 2. Hindu landlords and moneylenders were taking over their land. 3. Missionaries were criticizing their traditional culture. Q16. Mention different types of activities where tribal people were involved. Ans. Some were jhum cultivators. 2. Some were hunters and gatherers. 3. Some herded animals. 4. Some took to settled cultivation. Q17. How was the Birsa movement significant? In what ways was the Birsa movement significant? What was importance of Birsa movement? State the significance of the movement started by Birsa Munda. Ans. First, it forced the colonial government to introduce laws so that the land of the Tiawan-Bils could not be easily taken over by dikus. Second, it showed once again that the tribal people had the capacity to protest against injustice and express their anger against colonial rule. Q18. How did Birsa resume his movement after his release in 1897? Or, what did Birsa Munda and his followers do after his release in 1897? Ans. He began touring the villages to gather support. He used traditional symbols and language to rouse people, urging them to destroy Ravana, dikus and the Europeans, and establish a kingdom under his leadership. Birsa's followers began targeting the symbols of diku and European power. They attacked police stations and churches and raided the property of moneylenders and zamindars. They raised the white flag as a symbol of Birsa Raj. Q19. What was the problem faced by the silk growers, Santals, of Jharkhand during the 19th century? Ans. Hazaribagh, in present-day Jharkhand, was an area where the Santals reared cocoons. The traders dealing in silk sent in their agents who gave loans to the tribal people and collected the cocoons. The growers were paid 3 rupees to 4 rupees for 1,000 cocoons. These were then exported to Burdwan or Gaya where they were sold at 5 times the price. The middlemen, so called because they arranged deals between the exporters and silk growers, made huge profits. The silk growers earned very little. Q20. How did the powers of tribal chiefs change under colonial rule? Ans. They were allowed to keep their land titles over a cluster of villages and rent out lands, but they lost much of their administrative power and were forced to follow laws made by British officials in India. 2. They also had to pay tribute to the British and discipline the tribal groups on behalf of the British. 3. They lost the authority they had earlier enjoyed amongst their people, and were unable to fulfill their traditional functions. Q21. How did traders and moneylenders exploit the tribal people? Or, why did the tribal group see the moneylender and trader as evil outsiders and the cause of their misery? Or, why did the tribal people consider moneylenders and traders as evil outsiders? Ans. Tribal groups often needed to buy and sell in order to be able to get the goods that were not produced within the locality. This led to their dependence on traders and moneylenders. Traders came around with things for sale and sold the goods at high prices. Moneylenders gave loans with which the Tiawan-Bils met their cash needs, adding to what they earned. But the interest charged on the loans was usually very high. So for the Tiawan-Bils, market and commerce often meant debt and poverty. Q22. What problem did the British face after they brought changes in forest laws? How did they solve the problem? Ans. From where would the forest department get its labor to cut trees for railway sleepers and to transport logs? Colonial officials came up with a solution. They decided that they would give jhum cultivators small patches of land in the forests and allow them to cultivate these on the condition that those who lived in the villages would have to provide labor to the forest department and look after the forests. So, in many regions the forest department established forest villages to ensure a regular supply of cheap labor. Q23. What was Birsa's vision of a golden age? Why do you think such a vision appealed to the people of the region? Ans. Birsa was deeply influenced by many of the ideas he came in touch with in his growing up years. His movement was aimed at reforming tribal society. He urged the Mundas to give up drinking liquor, clean their village, and stop believing in witchcraft and sorcery. Birsa urged his followers to recover their glorious past. He talked of a golden age in the past as Satyug, the age of truth, when Mundas lived a good life, constructed embankments, tapped natural springs, planted trees and orchards, practiced cultivation to earn their living. They did not kill their brethren and relatives. They lived honestly. Birsa also wanted people to once again work on their land, settle down and cultivate their fields. Such a vision appealed to the people of the region because they got fed up with British forest laws and the restrictions that were imposed on them.